Especially online, the topic of dating and love seems to be one of the most popular topics that people like to talk about. And I personally have found that more confusing than helpful at times because so many people have so many different opinions, and at this point they all seem to contradict each other. And so I think it can be very confusing to make sense of all of that. And so today I wanted to share some dating advice that I personally have found very helpful amidst all of this chaos. And I hope that this resonates with you as well. From my experience and what I've seen when it comes to dating and love and relationships, most of our issues stem from being stuck in a black and white thinking, meaning we are mostly coming from one extreme. Either we are on the side of rushing into things too fast, getting emotionally attached way too fast, trusting too fast, ignoring red flags and not seeing people for who they really are, but for who we want them to be. And on the other extreme, we really struggle to trust anyone, and every person feels like a potential threat. We are hyper aware of the red flags. We get the ick about anything and everything, and no one seems to be good enough. If you relate to any of these things, then this episode is for you, because today let's talk about where these patterns really come from, how we can let go of them, and how we can arrive in a place that is balanced and rooted in self-confidence and self-empowerment so that we can navigate these waters without drowning in them. And so there's a lot to talk about, but as always, if you enjoy my content, please feel free to support it in some way, such as liking the video, commenting, subscribing, or leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thank you so much. And now let's get right into today's conversation. Chapter 1, projecting. So let's start with the first extreme that we tend to get pulled into. And I would say a very classic, stereotypical example of this scenario would be that you meet someone and before it's really safe and smart to do so, you already get emotionally attached way too fast and you start caring too much too fast. And now suddenly you are all in and you start envisioning your future together and the amazing person they could be separate from the person they really are. And in that you continue to ignore all the red flags and all the signs until it's too late, and you probably end up getting hurt or disappointed because the person turns out to be someone different than who you thought they were. I think many of us have been there, and if you have been there, you know it mostly doesn't end very well. If you know, you know, and there are obviously a lot of different reasons why we fall into such patterns. But for me personally, the one thing that really started to shift this was to honestly ask myself, if this mindset is fundamentally not benefiting me, on the contrary, it's causing me to get hurt, then why do I do it? And to be really honest with the answer and to go beyond, oh, I'm just a hopeless romantic, or oh, I just see the best in people. Like, cut the crap. Why am I stuck in a mindset that is fundamentally not rooted in self-love? From my experience, when I was honest with myself, I realized that I think this pattern can really only happen when you are not feeling fulfilled and happy within your own presence. Maybe you feel a void within yourself that is making you feel empty or disconnected or unfulfilled. And the issue comes when we have no idea how to fill that void ourselves and how to find fulfillment in our own presence, because that's when we get stuck in the idea, maybe someone else can be that for me. Maybe someone else can fulfill me in the ways that I'm not managing to fulfill myself. And from there, it's very easy to start not seeing people for who they really are, but for who we want them to be. And that's when you get attached too fast and you ignore the red flags, not because you're dumb, but because on some level, you don't want to see the red flags, because beyond that, you want to get attached, thinking that that attachment might fill that void. The thing is, that void is something that we all feel at times. It's totally normal, it's human, it's part of life. And so that's not the issue, but the issue comes when we start to believe that we can only fulfill that void through an attachment with another person, because that is just so not true, and it is so not representative of how much more we have within ourselves to unlock and how much more there is to life. And so for me, if I would have to choose the one thing that helped me step out of this mindset more, it was really to find things that fulfill me in my own personal life outside of the idea of a relationship or dating, and to really invest more and more energy into those things so that they can grow. I know it can be difficult to find things that fulfill us, but I think with a certain level of determination and commitment towards ourselves and patience, it is so possible to find those things within ourselves, and they will obviously be individually different based on who you are. But for me personally, it was things such as my work and my creativity, and also my faith and my connection with myself. I would say those were probably the main two things, but then also things such as my family, friendships, my dreams and my goals for the future, my small little hobbies that I picked up on the way, saying yes to things more. And I think the more we train the muscle to find fulfillment in those other things, the more just the thought of being in a situation where you have to see someone different than who they really are, but for who you would wish they would be, just the thought of that kind of starts giving you the biggest ick ever, because there is less and less need to put yourself in such a situation. Does that mean that the idea of dating or relationships cannot be part of any of our fulfillment in life? No, of course not. They very well can be. But at the same time, I really believe in perfect timing, and when things are supposed to be, they will be. And so when you meet someone where it is a healthy connection, which can be short-term or long-term or whatever it looks like, doesn't really matter. But when it is healthy, which is something that we all deserve, in that connection, this mindset will not be needed. You will not have to see the person different than who they really are. You will not have to ignore the red flags. You will not have to project this idea of what you really want onto someone who has either no capacity or no desire to be any of that. We might as well work on removing this mindset either way, because that is also the only way we will ever meet someone where it matches, because that mindset will not be needed in such a situation, which will truly be fulfilling. Chapter 2, protecting. So now let's move on to the other extreme, which I'm sure many of us are also way too familiar with. And I would say some common examples here are we really struggle to trust anyone because everyone feels like a potential to get hurt. We get an ick about anything and everything as a way to protect ourselves and keep people away. When we do meet someone, we mostly expect the worst from them, even if there was no reason to, because that's what we know and expect from the past. And we really struggle to let people in and see people's true colors and not what our fears are making us believe. Again, there are so many things that can bring this out based on our own individual experience, but I would say one of the most common things is probably that you have experienced some kind of hurt or pain in the past, and you really, really don't want to experience that again. And so you would rather isolate yourself from everyone and keep everyone away, even if that's not making you happy and it's not making other people happy, because rather that than ever risking getting hurt again in the way that you have experienced in the past. At first, when I was stuck in such patterns, I thought, okay, I have experienced things that have made me lose trust in other people, and that's valid, but I guess now the only solution is to learn to trust other people again, but other people don't seem very trustworthy, and so I guess there's nothing I can do now. When eventually I realized that's not what it was about at all, because when you really think about it, we all know that there will always be shitty, dysfunctional people out there who don't have good intentions. But from my experience, there's only a need to live in constant fear of that and in constant fear of being pulled into such a situation if fundamentally we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust our own ability to walk away. We don't trust our own ability to set boundaries and to speak up for ourselves and to listen to our intuition and what we feel. Fundamentally, we don't trust ourselves and how we would handle such such things. And so that's what I had to realize for myself. Maybe what I really lost through those experiences and I now have to gain back is not my trust in other people, but my trust in myself. Maybe I'm not trying to protect myself from others, but trying to protect myself from myself because I don't trust myself anymore based on those past experiences and what I believe I allowed into my life. A situation happens and it shocks us so much that it makes us lose trust in other people. And I think at first it's this shock of like, oh my God, I can't believe people like this exist. That means I cannot trust anyone and nobody's trustworthy. But then eventually I think once you stay in that long enough, it can easily trickle down to, okay, if people like this exist, then how come I couldn't see? How come I didn't walk away earlier? How come I didn't listen to my intuition sooner? How come I didn't speak up for myself more? How come I didn't? How can I have allowed this into my life? And I think that's when it happens. We lose trust in ourselves. And that doesn't mean that it was all our fault, but that's where the mind goes. And then I think this story of like, I don't trust other people can easily become an excuse to not look at the root cause and what we really have lost, which is our trust in ourselves. And without rebuilding that, it will be impossible to truly trust other people again. It's hard because often when we experience situations that make us lose trust in other people, then we try to control the fact that we never want to experience something like that again, even if it means isolating ourselves and being in constant fear. But that is just so not worth it because as much as we try, we will never be able to fully control life and all the experiences that are thrown at us. But what we can know and what we can find confidence and security in is our trust within ourselves, that we know if for whatever reason such an experience happens again, this time I know how to walk away sooner. This time I know how to listen to my intuition. This time, whatever I have learned from my past is my confidence and my trust within myself. And that's enough for me because I know regardless, I will be okay because I trust myself. Does that mean the only thing we can ever really rely on is our trust within ourselves because nobody's really trustworthy? No, of course not. But I think this is so important because it is only really possible to trust other people in a healthy way when at the core of that trust is our trust within ourselves, because that's the only way we will be able to see situations for what they really are and not what we fear them to be, which will give us the capability to decide who to trust and who not to trust, which has to be the fundamental thing to be able to trust people in a healthy way and feel secure in that trust. All right, that is all I wanted to share for today. Thank you so much. And I'm so looking forward to connecting with you in my next episode.